Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be continuing to look and explore BT04 and see everything that it has to offer, and it offers quite a lot, especially some new and powerful upgrades to the Megazoo deck. So that's right, I'm going to be covering Megazoo. So Megazoo is a pretty unique style of deck where basically the whole idea is to just try to play your Megas, so that way you could Digivolve them right into the level 7s and then win off of the back of the level 7s, and then you just have a whole bunch of other really powerful tools to just help make the deck move along. So it's definitely a really unique and powerful deck to be playing around with, and BT04 gave it a couple of new tools to really make it even stronger than it was before. So, going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Upamon. So Upamon is just the 5th Digitama just to have a 5th Digitama. You're not obligated to run a 5th Digitama. I just feel like I always want to have a 5th Digitama just because I'm only playing for rookies. So that way when I run out of rookies, I still want to have access to my blue cards. So Upamon is just acting as the 5th Digitama, and it's a pretty good Digitama to be running just because it helps us draw cards. But the main Digitama of the deck is going to be 4 copies of DemiVeemon. So DemiVeemon is helping us draw cards thanks to the Veemon that has jamming. So this is going to be the main Digitama and the main way we want to draw cards. But like I said, I just like running 5, so that way I'll always have a blue source even after all my rookies are expended. And then as far as the only rookie of the deck, I'm just running 4 copies of Veemon. So this Veemon is really only in the deck just because he has jamming, so that way we could draw as consistently as we possibly can off of the DemiVeemon. And then on top of which, he could also be pretty annoying because of jamming, just because he'll always be surviving security checks against the opponent's security Digimon. So this is just really good because he could be recursive damage if left alone, and that's just really, really powerful. And he could be an absolute monster for the opponent to try to deal with, just because we'll have some other big threats that they have to worry about. Next, on to the level 5s, because I'm not running any level 4s. I'm going to be playing 3 copies of Infermon. So this is the promo Infermon, and we're really only playing him just because he has an on-play ability where we get to de-Digivolve 1 on one of the opponent's Digimon. So we're using the de-Digivolve mechanic in this to kind of act as like an anti-tempo kind of a card, where the whole idea is they're just trying to build up, and then we use Infermon to try to tear down their stack a little bit, so that the way they have to try to rebuild. And while they're wasting their memory trying to rebuild, that's just memory that they could have been playing to go towards more powerful plays, so he's just acting as a really good disruption tool. On top of which, he is a black level 5 that we don't care about digivolving up into, so he just makes a lot of sense to play in this style of deck, considering we are also playing a couple of black cards that we do kind of want to digivolve sometimes. And then I'm going to be running 1 copy of Skullgreymon as the only other level 5 in the deck, just for some very similar reasons. He has this nice on-play ability where we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with blocker. There's just a whole bunch of Digimon in the game with blocker, and now thanks to BT04 and the new starter decks, there's even more blockers in the game, so there's a higher chance that Skullgreymon will have a viable target in order to delete. But we are primarily using a lot more black cards than we are red cards, but Skullgreymon is still definitely a really good card that we definitely want to be using. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Machinedramon. So this is the BT02 Machinedramon, and this Machinedramon is absolutely insane for the deck just because he has the blocker ability and he has an on-play ability. So again, we don't care about not digivolving up into him. We could just hard play him to get the on-play ability, and his on-play ability is really powerful where we get to de-digivolve 2 on 2 of the opponent's Digimon. So similar why Infermon is kind of good is why Machinedramon is good on top of him being a blocker, is because we could use that de-digivolve to act as some form of disruption to make the opponent's plays that much less powerful. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of BryweLudramon. So BryweLudramon is just a really good card in the deck just because he has a low play cost compared to a lot of the other Megas. He has some relatively decent DP, and he comes with a nice inheritable ability for our level 7s, where the inheritable ability he gives is the blocker ability. So ideally he's meant for RagnaLoardmon, but this works on basically any level 7 that we feel like we want to be using, so making sure that our level 7s are as strong as they possibly can be is definitely really good. And on top of that, he also digivolves off of red or black, which those are the only level 5 colors that I'm going to be playing around with. So if I really feel like I need to digivolve up into him rather than hard play him, I have that option also. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Craniamon. So Craniamon is one of the more expensive level 6s that we could be running, so that's kind of why I prefer to run more Infermons than Skullgreymons, so that way I could just use Infermon to digivolve into Craniamon, but if I just need to hard play Craniamon, then I still have to do that, just because Craniamon's ability is so good for the deck. So what his ability is doing is he natively has the blocker ability, so he's just another blocker for the deck, and on top of which he has this really good ability that triggers during all players' turns, where your Digimon with blocker can't be deleted by the opponent's card effects. So yes, they could still be bounced, they could still be tucked, they could still be DP reduced, so there is ways around Craniamon's ability, but the fact that this ability still is acting as some form of protection for a good number of our Digimon is the reason why we want to be utilizing the card. Next, I'm going to be playing 4 copies of Volcanicdramon. So Volcanicdramon is just another good on-play Mega, where we really just care about the fact that he can delete all of the opponent's Digimon with 4,000 or less DP. So if they're trying to go wide because we played something and gave them a whole bunch of memory, then Volcanicdramon could just come down and clear a good number of Digimon off their board. And then on top of that, he also has Security Tech +1, so even him just sitting on the field can present a lot of pressure onto the opponent just because he's always going to be swinging for 2 checks. Even though his DP is a little bit on the lower side, we don't necessarily care because 9 out of 10 times we just want to digivolve up into him, but in case we don't, the Security Tech Plus is nice. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Durandamon. So Durandamon is just another really good Mega for the deck to be playing around with for basically all of the same exact reasons as BryweLudramon. Low play cost, decent DP, can evolve off of red or black, and he gives our level 7s the piercing ability. So he is just doing everything that BryweLudramon is doing for the deck, except a little bit more offensively and not defensively, just because piercing is such a powerful keyword to be playing around with. So that way it ensures that we're always going to be dealing damage. And then the last normal level 6 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Magnadramon. So Magnadramon is just another really insane card for the deck just because it allows us to recover. So the on-play ability allows us to recover 2 if our security is 3 or less. So this way we have some way to try to stay in the game, and because all of our Digimon for the most part are high level, there's a high chance that the opponent might not be able to deal or clear our security, so Magnadramon just allowing us to recover is really, really good, even though we can't really utilize this card past that ability, but we don't really care because that's all we want to gain out of the card. And then as far as the level 7s go, I'm going to be running 4 copies of RagnaLoardmon. So RagnaLoardmon is just an absolutely insane level 7 for the deck to be playing around with, just because he natively has Security Tech +1 and Reboot. So both of those things are very, very powerful. And then, obviously, he's supposed to be synergizing with BryweLudramon and Durandamon, because he also has that similar Evo off of black, Evo off of red theme that those two were playing around with, and his when digivolving ability lets us add one of them underneath our evolution stack to gain 3 memory, so he could basically Evo for 0, and that's just absolutely insane. On top of which, all of the other keywords that he'd be gaining, like blocker and piercing, so he could just be a really annoying and very powerful Digimon to allow us to aggress onto the opponent's security very, very easily with. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Omnimon. So this is the OG Omnimon from BT01, and this Omnimon is still pretty good, but since we're not necessarily focusing so hard on the red side of cards, I definitely still want to see him, but just not as often as some of my other cards, because the other cards could also evolve off of black, and that seems like that's more of the key focal point that the deck is going to be playing around with, but Omnimon is still just an absolutely insane Digimon to be utilizing just because he has this nice when digivolving ability where one of the opponent's Digimon gets deleted and then all of the opponent's Digimon with the same name also get deleted. So if they just have a whole field full of a Digimon with the same name, then Omnimon just comes in and deletes all of them. And then on top of which, he has a nice when attacking ability where we could unsuspend this Digimon by returning one of his level 6s underneath him to our hand. So this is just really good because multi-attacking is just good, and it allows us to reuse whatever level 6 we feel like we're using under him. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Millenniummon. So Millenniummon is just another really good level 7 for the deck to be playing around with. Obviously, we're not playing any purple, so we're always going to be digivolving him off of black. And he is still just a pretty decent Digimon because he has this nice powerful when digivolving ability where we get to tuck one of the opponent's Digimon back to the bottom of their deck. So this is really good removal just because it'll bypass any on-delete abilities and get rid of any Digimon that we might not be able to deal with normally, or again, we don't want to delete or return to their hand or do anything with, so putting them to the bottom just seems like it's another really good option in terms of a different form of removal. And then on top of that, he has this nice on-delete ability where when he gets deleted, we get to basically replay the card if he has anything underneath his evolution sources. So a built-in self-reviving ability is just really good, ensuring that he's going to be as sticky as he possibly can to try to stay on the board as long as he possibly can. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Omnimon Altar S. So Omnimon Altar S is going to be the main Omnimon that we're going to be playing because, again, he just fits better with the colors that we're playing around with in the deck because he can digivolve off of red or black. And then on top of that, he has this really nice when digivolving ability where we get to de-digivolve 1 on all of the opponent's Digimon, and then any of them that have 5,000 or less DP just get deleted. So he's just acting as a really good board clear, and he combos very nicely with Volcanicdramon, where we just play Volcanicdramon, wipe some Digimon off the field, and then it really makes them afraid to want to try to go wide again, just because Omnimon Altar S will threaten another board wipe. So Omnimon Altar S's board wipe ability is just really, really powerful, on top of which he has a nice when attacking ability where we basically get to make him unblockable for returning a level 6 that's under him back to our hand. So that's really good because it could help us close out games because we could punch with RagnaLoardmon for a lot of their security, try to build up or set up a nice Omnimon Altar S, and then use Altar S to swing for the game while they basically have no way to actually defend against him. So Omnimon Altar S is just absolutely fantastic. And then the last level 7 of the deck that I am going to be choosing to play is going to be 2 copies of Chaosmon. So Chaosmon is just another very fantastic Digimon for us to be working with. He does digivolve off of green and black. Obviously, we're not really running any green, but we could think about running green just to try to incorporate Chaosmon and Volderarm a little bit more. But I just feel like for what the deck is doing, normal Chaosmon is just good enough because he natively has the piercing ability. And then on top of that, he has this really nice when digivolving ability where we get to unsuspend this Digimon, and then we can attack into the opponent's Digimon even though it's unsuspended. So this is just acting as another form of removal where the whole idea is we just swing with one of our Megas and then digivolve into Chaosmon and then unsuspend and swing into their Digimon and take a security check that way. So Chaosmon is just another really fantastic tool to be playing around with for this deck. And then the only option of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Kaiser Nail. So Kaiser Nail is pretty spicy because a lot of our Megas do have on-play abilities, and Kaiser Nail is just an easy way to separate our evolution source to get those on-play abilities again. So that's like the cuteness and power that Kaiser Nail is adding to the deck, just because being able to separate our stacks also allows us to easily go up into our level 7s instead of just raw playing another one and spending all of that memory just to play another Digimon. So Kaiser Nail is just really good for that, and it has a nice security ability where it activates its main, so that way when it's checked in the security, if we do have a Digimon underneath that does have a on-play ability, then we'll get that ability on the opponent's turn, and that could be pretty obnoxious depending on what that card is. And then as far as the only tamer of the deck, I'm just choosing to run 3 copies of Izzy, just because Izzy seems like it's generically the best memory fixing tamer that we have access to. So what he's doing is if our memory is ever less than 3, then he'll just hard set it to 3, and then he has this nice on-play ability where we get to look at the top 3 cards of our deck, and then if all of them revealed this way are black, then we get to gain 1 memory, and we get to place them back in any order. So because we aren't going to be as drawing as often as your average deck, being able to stack the top of our deck is the primary reason why we like this card, but if it just so happens that all of the cards are black and we are running a decent number of black cards, then he just costs 3, and that's already pretty good. So Izzy I just find to be one of the better tamers that we have to be working with for this style of deck. And then there's just a ton of variety and flexibility on how you could build the deck, all depending on what are the level 7s you want to be focusing on and what colors you want to be focusing on. So you could think about playing the Gabumon as another rookie if you wanted to play another rookie, just because he's fitting on color with our Digitamas, and on top of that, if we don't feel like we want to use him for that, then he has this nice on-play ability of allowing us to draw a card, so being able to replace himself while having a level 3 on the board is still pretty decent. But if you wanted to play any of the Megas that are vanilla that have the 10 to 12 stat line, then you could play any of those, and all of those are pretty good just because the stat line is very good. Most of the time you care about the low play cost rather than the low evo cost, just because 10 just allows you to utilize a lot of your cards even if you're going first. Yes, it'll be setting the opponent at 10 memory, but you'll actually be able to play your cards versus a lot of them being at 11 or 12 or even as high as 13. So just having a card that just costs 10 is super nice, and this stat line is spread out through a whole bunch of different colors, so you could utilize a whole bunch of different one of these types of cards. Then you also could think about utilizing the new Machinedramon from the Black Starter deck, and vice versa, any of the new cards that follow this stat line from the new starter decks as well. Most of the time you just, again, care about the fact that it has a play cost of 10, but if you do have the off chance of being able to get his When Digivolving ability based on your level 5 lineup, if you're running any, that's pretty nice just because 2 of your Digimon could gain Reboot, and then you're already playing with Blocker, so Reboot and Blocker is just already some good synergy. Then you could also think about running Puppetmon as one of the good green Megas with an on-play ability, where Puppetmon's on-play ability suspends one of the opponent's Digimon down and then stun locks it. So if you want to take out Magnadramon in this deck and put in Puppetmon in its place, then I wouldn't disagree with that decision at all, just because Puppetmon is very, very powerful, and on top of which it's buying you some time by stun-locking all of your opponent's suspended Digimon from being able to restand, and on top of that, it even has a nice upside that you could actually utilize, where you have a when attacking ability of gaining 1 memory, so that way you can make your plays that much more efficient, even though you're playing 1 card a turn 9 out of 10 times anyway. Then you also could think about running Spiderman, just again another level 6 that has a play cost of 10, and Spiderman also has the upside where during your turn this Digimon gets plus 3000 DP, so during your turn when he's attacking he'll be at 13. So that way you could attack with Spiderman, have the attack have a higher chance of being successful because of the DP boost, and then go into a level 7 right afterward. Then you could alter the deck dramatically to incorporate Chaosmon Volderarm. So there is a second version of Megazoo that is primarily yellow-based, so just keep that in mind. But you could think about running Chaosmon Volderarm even in this style of deck, all depending on the types of cards that you kind of like play around with. So Chaosmon Volderarm is just another really powerful level 7, where you get to activate his ability twice when Digivolving, and then his when Digivolving ability is minus 7000 DP. So you could target 2 separate things to minus 7,000 to them and delete them, or you could stack it together and kill 1 big Digimon. So he's got a lot of power and flexibility on his level of removal there, and on top of that he also has a nice on-delete ability of gaining 3 memory, so that way if it's deleted during the opponent's turn, you're taking away 3 memory, or if he's deleted during your turn, you're basically gaining 3 memory. Then there's a couple of different options you could think about playing in the deck. You could play Cocytus Breath just because it's Cocytus Breath, and it's basically the blue Gaia Force. It's just allowing you to bounce any Digimon on the opponent's field back to their hand, which is pretty good considering most of the time the other bounce cards have some form of limitation or restriction, so not having that is pretty good. And then you could also just run Gaia Force as the big red removal card, where you could just delete any one of the opponent's Digimon. So again, just good options you could think about playing. Or if you wanted to be really cute and really cheeky, you could think about playing Final Zupagon Punch, just because this works with basically any of our level 7s, and those are the only cards we'd be targeting, where it'll give them plus 3000 DP until the end of the turn, and then if that Digimon has 16 or more DP, then it gains Blocker, Reboot, and Security Attack +1, just allowing your level 7s to be that much more threatening. And then in the security, this card adds itself to your hand, so you could figure out when is the best time to utilize the card. And then there's a couple of different tamers you could run, again, all depending on the types of cards you want to be using and the types of cards you want to be supporting. So you could use either of the black ties if you were playing a little bit more into the blocker theme. So this deck kind of is, but I just felt like Izzy for consistency is just a better tamer to be playing with. But again, you could be running either of the black ties for blocker synergy. You could be running the red tie just because he'll just boost your Digimon's DP by 1,000. So if you are playing Zubagon Punch, it makes that level of play possible even on your level 6s. And those are just some examples of other tamers you could think about utilizing, all depending on what you're trying to be supporting. But Megazoo definitely is a really fun and interesting deck to be playing around with just because it's playing the game differently than any other deck, and it's basically foregoing the evolution mechanic to just try to get to our level 7s as quickly as we possibly can by just allowing us to be playing our Megas as efficiently as we possibly can. So, as I mentioned before, there's just a ton of flexibility and variety that you could be playing around with, all depending on what your focus is. And for the most part, the focus of this version of the deck is more around RagnaLoardmon and a lot of his support. So we're playing more of a black-red core, where if you're playing like a Chaosmon or Chaosmon Volderarm, then you want to be playing more of a green and yellow core, just as an example. So depending on, again, the level 7s you're trying to incorporate and support, all depend on the other types of cards that you want to be playing the deck with. And I probably will have a version of the deck that is the Chaosmon version, so look forward to that into the future. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are different ways that you could support me in the channel. So one of those ways is I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so whenever you use that affiliate link to buy cards off of tcgplayer.com, then some of the money will go to supporting me in the channel. And on top of which, I also do stream over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu. So following and subbing is a good way to support me over on that platform as well. And on top of that, I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook. So whenever you buy one of my designs through them, then some of that money will also help go to supporting me in the channel. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.